Nihehe twasibye gutabaza, nihehe twibagiwe kuvuza induru, nihehe twanze kwikiriza indirimbo mbi yari itewe.
Ibi by'amoko ngo abahutu abatutsi nta byabagaho, ariko ayo magambo yabagaho avuga
utagira igihugu. Ubuhunzi buragora, ntabwo wemerwa
Good afternoon to you all. Our guest speaker, Dr. Theoneste Rutayisire, and the representative of Minubumwe in our event, Dr. Augustin Shimimana, the representative of Kwibuka to this event, Equity Group Board Chair and Madam, Group and EGF Board Directors, EBR Board Directors, Reverend Ben Michael, Mr. Tom Dahiro, I don't see him, Group Executives, Equity Rwanda, MD and Management, survivors and the staff of Equity Bank here present. Good afternoon once again. I welcome you to this Equity Bank Kwibuka 32 commemoration event. And I'm Lydie Mutesi, and I'm truly honored to serve as your MC today. Today, we gather in remembrance, Kwibuka, to honor the lives lost during 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. Turibuka, we remember those who were taken from us, and we stand with those who carry this memory every single day. As we begin, let us reflect with respect, honor those we lost, and renew our commitment to a united and a peaceful future. As we start this event, I would like to request all of you to stand up and we observe a moment of silence to honor the lives of our loved ones lost in 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. Thank you so much. As we are still standing, I would like to welcome Reverend Ben Michael to come forward to say a prayer for us.
May the souls of the beloved ones who departed from us during genocide, may their souls, wherever they are resting, continue to rest in eternal peace. Amen. We can take our seats. Every year in Rwanda, in April, Rwanda sets aside 100 days to commemorate genocide against the Tutsi, which happened 32 years ago in 1994. And as you all know, the tagline of the remembrance is remember, unite, renew. Beloved ones of God, the Equity Bank family, this afternoon we gather together, and I want all of us to quickly reflect on remembrance. Many people in the Bible are talked about, and they have been written about, especially in the Old Testament, that they built altars or memorials after a significant encounter with God. Those altars became places of remembrance, gratitude, and testimony, so that future generations would never forget what God had done for them. In the book of Genesis, we see Noah building an altar after surviving a flood. All people had died. In Genesis, we see Abraham building an altar on Mount Moriah after God provided a lamb instead of Isaac. In Exodus, Moses built an altar and called it, "The Lord is my banner," after Israel defeated the Amalekites. Joshua, after crossing the river Jordan, builds an altar. And then my favorite one is in the book of Samuel. Samuel sets up an altar and calls it Ebenezer. God gave Israel victory. Thus far, the Lord has brought us. These people set beautiful examples for us to follow, to be intentional about never forgetting, remembering what God has done for us. And if I were to build an altar here, I would choose the word Ebenezer. Thus far, the Lord has brought Rwanda. Thus far, the Lord has brought Rwanda. Today, in Rwanda, you are gathered as a commercial bank. In 1994, there were only 3 licensed commercial banks. Today, if my memory has it well, we have 16 licensed commercial banks. Thus far, the Lord has brought us. Thus far, the Lord has brought us. And so, beloved Equity Bank, we remember to honor victims and survivors. We remember never again. We remember to teach future generations, to inform them about our history of Rwanda. We remember to promote healing and reconciliation. We remember to celebrate the resilience and restoration. And today, as the Equity Bank family, you have chosen, we have chosen to remember. And so even as we remember, beloved, may it not just be a memorial event, but also a personal lifestyle reflection. May we never pass by our Ebenezer moments without giving thanks to the Almighty God. Equity Bank, you have chosen a lot to give thanks, and we have a lot to give thanks to God. If my memory has it right, Equity Bank has more than 400 branches across 4 or probably 5 countries. Rwanda has chosen to remember. Equity Bank has chosen to remember. Let us all individually remember. Remember from a place of never again. From a place of gratitude of how our nation has come from a place of honoring the lives of those who lost their lives while committing themselves to building unity, healing, dignity, and hope for a future generation. In the words of Pope Paul II, he says, and I quote, "Remember how far you have come with gratitude. Live the present with enthusiasm. Look forward with confidence. Equity Bank, look forward with confidence. Rwanda, look forward with confidence. Let us pray. Father, Father of Abraham, Father of Isaac, Father of Jacob, today as the Equity Group staff stand on this sacred ground, a place marked by deep pain, loss, and remembrance, we dearly remember the lives that were lost during the genocide against the Tutsi in 1994. We honor the men, women, and the children whose dreams were cut short. We carry in our hearts as the Equity Bank Group the hearts of the survivors and the grieving families and all those whose lives were forever changed because of this grave act. Lord, your word reminds us in the book of Psalms 34, verse 18, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. O Lord, our Father, please draw near to every heart that is here, every heart in Rwanda that still carries wounds of sorrow and memory. Bring comfort where there is pain, healing where there is trauma, and hope where there is hopelessness. We pray for the families of victims. May your peace surround them. May they continue to find strength to move forward, courage to keep living, and grace to remember with dignity and love. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the journey of unity and reconciliation that has taken root in Rwanda. What once seemed impossible, you have helped to become a testimony of healing, Lord, forgiveness, Lord, rebuilding, Lord. Continue, Lord, I pray, to protect the spirit of oneness in Rwanda. Guard this nation against hatred. Guard this nation against division. Guard this nation against evil ideologies that destroy humanity. We pray, O Lord, for continued growth and development of Rwanda. Small as it were, we pray for development. May God grant wisdom and integrity to the leaders of this nation as they guide its people into a future filled with hope and opportunity. May Rwanda continue to flourish economically, socially, spiritually, and may it stand as a testimony of resilience, reconciliation, and transformation to the rest of the world. Lord, let this nation be a light to many nations, an example of unity, dignity, courage, and peace. We entrust this memorial, these memories, and this nation into your faithful hands because you care for us. And may the peace of the Lord, which is greater than we can understand, that peace that surpasses all human understanding, continue to engulf the entire Rwanda. May that peace continue to engulf the entire Equity Bank Group. May that peace continue to engulf whoever is passing through pain in this nation. And may the blessing of God, who is the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit, continue to be with you, continue to remain with you, now and evermore. Amen.
May I say amen to everyone who is around. Thank you so much for this very reflective and powerful prayer, Reverend Ben. Now, I would like to welcome the EBL MD to give us the welcoming remarks. Thank you so much.
To use both languages. I'll try and mix Kinyarwanda, but for the benefit of our guests who may not be very conversant with Kinyarwanda, I'll try and mix with English as well. Nyakubahwa uhagarariye Minubumwe, Nyakubahwa uhagarariye Ibuka, Nyakubahwa Chairman wa board wa group, Nyakubahwa Chairman wa Equity Bank Rwanda board, group directors who are here, board members of the Equity Bank Rwanda board, our friend Mr. Tom Ndahiro, beloved pastor Reverend Ben Michael, survivors of genocide who are here, colleagues, good afternoon. Today is not an easy day. It's one of those days that we gather to remember the lives of the departed, and it takes us to a place that we stay back and reflect. Uyu munsi ni umunsi tujye tworohera mu buzima bwacu nk'abanyarwanda, cyane ko bituma twibuka ariko ntiduheranwe n'agahinda. Nk'uko Ben Michael yavuze, you remember, reunite and renew. Kwibuka bitwibutsa byinshi, bitwibutsa ko tugomba kwishakamo imbaraga zo kwiyubaka, ariko bikaduha no kumenya ko iyi si idasakaye. Remembrance for us is a source of strength, is a source of renewed hope, and it also reminds us that in this world there are possibilities, including what we've just seen in the Genocide Memorial Center that those who visited. As Equity Group, on behalf of the Equity Group, the entity board chair, the group board chair, the entity we have here in Rwanda is an entity that is ingrained in the culture and history of this country. Most of the staff you see here, many of them are genocide survivors, or their parents are. Many of us are still nursing wounds of what genocide left with us. Nonetheless, we feel encouraged, strengthened, and given hope for a better tomorrow because we know we have your support. Kwibuka kuri twebwe ni ngombwa, tugomba kubikora n'amateka yacu, ariko tujye twibuka ko nubwo twibuka tugafatanya ko dushyigikiwe n'igihugu cyacu n'ubuyobozi bwiza bahagaritse Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi muri 1994. We can't thank Inkotanyi enough, the current government, for stopping what could have been mayhem. Tugomba gushimira rero, tugashimira ubuyobozi bwiza, tugashimira Nyakubahwa Perezida wa Repubulika n'Inkotanyi zose zahagaze Jenoside kugira ngo tube turi abo turi uyu munsi. Ntibyoroshye, ariko nk'uko babitwibutsa buri munsi, tugomba guhora kubiyubakamo tukavuga ngo never again. We must get the resolute to say never again and do such things that would ensure continually that what happened to Rwanda, to our departed, never happens again to any of us in our history, in our lifetime, but also across the borders of Rwanda. We see it today in many parts of the countries that are neighboring with us. And we pray and we work with those that are working hard to ensure that we unite to the cause and say never again. It should never happen again. Mine today is to strengthen those who are genocide survivors. We join you in sorrow, but join you also in remembrance. Grief should never be with us forever. We should use this moment as a source of courage to soldier on. Tuzi neza ibyo munyuramo umunsi ku wundi, kandi turabizeza ko tuzakomeza gufatanya kugira ngo ejo heza nkuko tuhashaka tuhubake kandi tuhagereho. At this point, I want to thank Minubumwe mwakoze kuza kubana natwe, bitwereka ko mudushyigikiye turi kumwe. Ndashaka kandi gushimira Ibuka, mwakoze cyane kubana natwe. And I want to thank, today is a special day, nubwo twibuka dufite abashyitsi muri twebwe. I want to thank the group chair and madam and the board directors from the group who are here for taking your time to be with us. This is a major event in our life as a country. We do this every year and join the country in remembering our departed ones who will continue to live with us in spirit. We thank you for taking your time to be with us here, to go through what we have just gone through, what you've seen. And also want to thank our board directors who are here for sparing your time, except that, save that for you, it is your usual, because we go through this together all the time. I also want to thank the Gisozi Genocide Memorial Center that receives us all the time when we knock on your doors, when we want to come and pay tribute to our departed ones, or come and cry and get all the tears off our eyes. You always open for us. Turabashimira cyane kuko urugwibutso ntabwo ari a tourist attraction. It is a place to reconnect with our departed ones. Turabashimira rero ko mwatwakiriye neza kandi mukaduha n'inyigisho, mukatwereka ko bishoboka ko twagira ubuzima bwiza. Nsoza, in conclusion, I want to thank the genocide survivors who are here for remaining strong. Ibikomere mubana nabyo turabizi, tubana namwe umunsi ku wundi, n'abatari hano bagenzi bacu mubakomeze, mabwire ngo mukomere, mwibuke mwiyubaka, mugire ubuzima bwiza, mube nk'abandi banyarwanda, ndetse uretse no kurengana imipaka y'u Rwanda, mube abanyarwanda babereye u Rwanda rwacu, babereye n'amahanga. I say this with confidence that what happened to Rwanda in 1994 was an eye-opener. What we see our leadership doing is to tell us that we must make sure that we build defense and defense walls that will guard against similar things happening. I will not say much. Uretse kuvuga ngo mukomere, twibuke twiyubaka, kandi dukomereze aho ngaho. I thank you very much.
Murakoze ku butumwa bwanyu MD. Thank you so much for your remarks. Muri aka kanya nagira ngo ntumire umuhanzi Bonon udufasha mu ndirimbo zo gukomeza kwibuka abacu no kubaha icyubahiro. We welcome the Kwibuka songs artist Bonhomme, who's going to perform one of his songs.
Thank you. Murakoze. Giye kuririmba indirimbo nise ijambo rya nyuma yavuze, twibukiranye amagambo twaganiriye nabo twibuka tujya gutandukana. Umwana wawe mwavuganye iki, umubyeyi wawe mwaganiriye iki, umuvandimwe mwaganiriye iki, reka twibukiranye ijambo rya nyuma yavuze. Yahageza naniwe atabasha no kuvuga, kuko we yahageze bamaze kumutema. Yahageza ari kumwe n'utwana twe tune, iyo wababonaga bahari nkurikirane. Yageze kuri bariyeri, abo yahasanze bamukubaho uruziga. We yageze kuri bariyeri, abo yahasanze bamukubaho uruziga. Yarafite imbaraga nke, maze ariyicarira. Akana ke ko mu mugongo kari kakomeje kurira, kamusabaga ibyo kurya, maze akabura icyamuha. Bamusabye k'uwo mwana yarahetse yamururutsa, uwo mubyeyi abasaba imbabazi, ati umwana wanjye ararwaye. Aratakamba basaba imbabazi, ati umwana wanjye ararwaye. Bamujishuye uwahetse uwo mubyeyi amanika ukuboko, ati mbere yuko munyica reka ngira icyo mbasaba. Ati ndabizi ko munyica, ndabibona ko nta makiriro. Ati ndabizi ko munyica, ndabibona ko nta makiriro. Kunyica ni munyice, ariko mundekera abana. Niba namwe muri ababyeyi, nimundekera abana. Niba namwe mwarabyaye, ndabinginze nimundekera abana. Iryo jambo rya nyuma yavuze, iteka rimpora ku mutima. Iryo jambo umubyeyi yavuze, ngurwo urukundo rw'ababyeyi. Ati kunyica ni munyice, ariko mundekera abana. Ati kunyica ni munyice, ariko ariko mundekera abana. Uko bakubitaga uwo mubyeyi, abana be nabo barabibonaga. Akana ke kabucura karamuhamagaye, akana ke kari igitambambuga karamuhamagaye, katari kose mama, nk'ubu turazira iki? Nibongera kugukubita ndabarega kuri papa, nibongera kugukubita ndabarega kuri papa. Iryo jambo rya nyuma yavuze, iteka rimora ku mutima. Iryo jambo uwo mubyeyi yavuze, ngurwo urukundo rw'ababyeyi. Ati kunyica nimunyice, ariko mundekera abana. Ati kunyica nimunyice, ariko mundekera abana. Nawe se nkundira nkubaze, nkundira nkubaze, wowe wacitse kw'icumu.
spoiled, and I enjoyed it, obviously. My two parents were working. We lived not far from where this place is located, in a close proximity. Not that close, but also not that far. It's maybe less than 20 minutes to reach to where you grew up. It's in the district of Rugenge, a former sector of Rugenge in the Nyarugenge district. And I would say that the main part of my life as a child, my childhood was very enjoyable. We had never been discriminated against anyone. We enjoyed the company with the neighbors, with the extended family, with everyone. I joined the primary school, and that was very okay until the question of identity came up. It came up through the discrimination policy of the government of the time, from which every student has to be reminded in the middle of every term about his ethnicity, and that was associated with the content, the narrative of history that we're learning, that we're consuming as a student, because as everyone have said, I mean, most of the history that you have captured, narrated here in the movies or into the memorial, was that the Tutsi people were described as evil. The main content of education, history that we're learning from primary school was about the evil Tutsi people, too proud, who had enslaved Hutu for over 400 years, and who were overthrown by Hutu Revolution 1959. And to associate with that was not that easy, because the main goal of the government was to embed hatred. Then students, by trying to figure out who are those Tutsi, then that had to be completed by that practice of asking students to stand up according to their ethnicity. Then they could associate those very hatred narrative to the people that they were seeing around them, whom were their colleagues. And I used to stand according to my wish first, because I could not figure out who's a Hutu and who's a Tutsi, and what that basically means. I sometimes stood up alongside my colleagues who were Hutu, because for me, they were good in football, they were playing well, they were many, they were stronger. But each and every time I would make that mistake, then our teachers were said to always remind us to go ask our parents where we belong to, and the next time not to commit the same mistake. So I remember going back home, and I was overwhelmed by that sense of frustration, because at my age, I could not understand why I was made to stand to where I felt that I don't want to belong to. And also because, addition to that, was the attitudes from our colleagues whom were Hutu mostly, and who would mock us and sometimes refuse to play with us. But of course that could not last longer. Then going back home, I used to ask my parents the reason behind that very strange attitude towards myself. And it revealed to me that my parents knew, but they could not tell me the whole truth about, and the reality about ethnicity. But I could not pay much attention to that. I would keep on praying and living happily, because that scenario was not quite often. But that continued until the war, 1990, when RPA took up arms and started fighting Habyarimana's regime. Then the situation worsened. The first time I heard about the country's invasion was in the afternoon. I don't remember the day, but I got it from my colleague, my primary school colleague, who were praying around and talking much about Rwanda being attacked. By then, we were consuming so much of movies, American movies, martial arts movie, those kind of things, and they were excited, thrilled to hear that we're going to see the elderly people fighting with the guns. So that was the feeling as a kid. But then it did not last longer because in school, the primary school where he studied at École Sainte Famille, then the teacher would exhort everyone to keep the matter of politics outside, and sometimes beating people up for evoking those issues. Then at the end of the month of October, I remember when the radio, after the radio has announced that Rwanda was attacked, it was announced by one of the journalists of Radio Rwanda. I remember his name was Amabiri Sisiwoma, and I was one of my neighbor. And then at the end of that month, we were asked, before we would enter in the class, to perform the victorious music of Rwandan armed forces as part of what we had to do. I remember well the song, which was exalting the bravery of Rwandan armed forces and who had defeated the enemies of Rwanda and those kind of things. And sometime after performing that, because as you know, we had to make a line before you enter in a class, and we had to make kind of a ballad and chanting that song. And going in a class then, some of the students of my class would make fun of us, and they will simply tell us that we're actually chanting our own defeat. Then that was a kind of a usual thing. The situation was worsening as the time goes on, and the end of 1990, I remember, we had an incident at home. We lived in such a hilly place, and we have had a problem of erosion. When it was, because sometimes when to get pooling so much rain, then we had to protect our plot to not be invaded by so much water. And my father had built a kind of wall in the bricks to prevent water entering in our plot, and it would remain then in our neighbor's side. And then, but that time, end of December 1990, then when it happened, neighbors came and they destroyed the wall. They actually make a hole in this wall to free the water. And they were very angry. They were chanting. They had brought kind of all kind of tools, killing tools. And then I remember, but that time I was coming out from school in the evening, and I was the first person from my home to go seeing what was happening. And they welcomed me with so much threats. They're telling me they're gonna chop my heads, and I'm a cockroach, a snake, and they're going to finish with theirs. And it was kind of very hard to swallow, because those people had been our very good neighbors. I used to go picking some of their children and bring them home, because I was the last born. I had no one to play with. But then, but that time, their tone changed, and they were very vicious and very threatening. And I could not believe what I was seeing them change, how they did change in such a short time. And then when my father came back from work, I informed everyone what had happened. And I remember we spent the whole day, the whole night fighting with them. And the incident would be stopped by militaries who were doing a patrol around in the middle of the night, who calmed the situation. And it was resolved the next day quite peacefully, a bit of kind of reconciliation process. But then from that time, I started seeing my surroundings as not being harmonious and very friendly I used to be, until in around 1992. By 1992, Rwanda was facing lots of political tensions. Political parties had been, some were nearly created, some others they came back with another form of slogan, but the hatred narrative never ceased. 1992 also was marked by lots of genocide trial. My mother's family was living in Kanzenze, in eastern part of the city, in Bugesera, and there had been a trial of genocide conducted by one of the burgomester, whose name was Kwibuka. So some of members of our family had been killed, and others sought refuge to our home. And then we started actually seeing the reality of those narratives that had been around. 1993, it was calmed down. My father basically joined one of the political party called PL, which was much seen as one of the political party that was considered to be a sympathizer of RPF, and that would also add on much threat. But the Tutsi population, if I may recall, had built a sense of a resilience towards those threats, and the fact that RPF had been fiercely fighting and capturing some areas, I may believe that has given them a sense of confidence, believing that maybe what was happening in the country was not the matter of ethnicity, and it was maybe political issues that were going to be resolved once maybe the war was over. And then in that atmosphere, some of our colleagues would quit the school, going for the training in different places around the country. There had been some trainings. I remember in Gabiro, some of our primary school kids, colleagues, went for training, and someone would disappear in the community for some time and came back, and we started receiving lots of warnings that some of the Tutsi men had joined RPF, and that would only bring us much misery. And then by that time, there was a lot of hatred, I remember, when, for instance, RTLM was created. We received this as a joking kind of entertaining radio, because it was producing kind of a very modern music. And inside they would send a very scary message, but people could not pay much attention on that. But then close to 1994, in my family, we had lost two of our great parents. Our two great parents passed on, and went for the funeral ceremony. The first one was in Bugesera. That was in February 1992. And the end of March 1993, my dad's side also, the great father passed on, and then we went for her funeral. And we spent, I remember it was an Eastern holiday. We spent it at Butale. And I cherish that memory because that's the last time we were able to gather as a family. And it was a kind of a last goodbye, but we could not know that. And then after it was over, my sister and myself went back to our home in Kigali. Then the genocide started 2 days after we had arrived at our home. So genocide was, it was sparked by, of course, by the death of the president. And in my family, we were walked with so much of shootings. There were literally exchange of fights. The sky wasn't blue. It was kind of brown, and there was lots of heavy artillery. living in Kigali before the genocide and hearing burst of grenades it was not an unusual thing. People had been used with that. But the thing is that it continued to happen. And then my father opened the curtain to see outside through the window what was happening. And immediately when we switched on the radio, we heard the announcement that President Habyarimana was killed, and the government was exhorting everyone to stay steady as they are going to search for enemies. My mom burst with the tears. She screamed and said that we're going to be all finished off. It was my first time to see my mom scared to that level and saying such a thing, being finished off. And my father quickly asked her to stop. So the whole day was spent with so much fear, receiving enough information about killings happening in different places, especially in Kigali. Some of the politicians reported to be killed. But again, in the night of that very day, we were attacked by a group of soldiers and our neighbors. They formed a band and they invaded our home and they ordered everyone to kneel down. It was done very fast. They forced the door in, and my father, who went straight to receive them, had his ID card with the Tutsi mention as his ethnicity, and were ordered to all kneel down. The soldiers were simply saying that they're going to kill us because the president was killed, and if they could not commit that revenge, it was a sign of not loving much the president. Our side, apart myself, acted quite faster. They kneeled down. My father led a prayer. My mom was kneeling next to him and the rest of the family members, and I was the only one staying steady and looking in the roof, trying to really figure out and looking at the eyes of these people and see if they are really going to kill us. It was a very scary because it was decided faster. Them being convinced they're going to kill us, and on our side, accepted and welcomed the death. And suddenly, after a few moments, there came up an idea of exchanging our safety with some money that my parents could pay. I could not know exactly how much, but they ended up having money, but promising us that they're going to come back and kill us anyway the next day. So we spent the rest of the day moving to different places. We went to one of the family friends whose name was Kanizio. He was a Tutsi. He was being chased away as well. But we managed to stay together. And the same night, the next day, we were attacked by neighbors again who started throwing some stones over the roof. And the next day, early in the afternoon, around this time, we quitted our home and went to a bush which is close to our home in order to have the day getting dark. And we had to then move to a place called Sela, which is, it was an abandoned kind of a school, small house of school, or I don't know, by priests. And then we went there. By the time we arrived, it was the third day after the genocide started. And we were joined by so many community of Tutsis around within our community, which had been also targeted and killed. Some people came joining that camp, very seriously injured. Some others were crying. So it was a very fearful kind of scenario. And we managed to stay there for a month. On the 22nd of May of April, then that camp was destroyed. We were attacked again by the mob, militiamen men, led by the former mayor of this city, Kigali, Renzao Tarsis, who was a colonel, and they had called upon all the militiamen men of our neighborhoods, usually a place called Kivu where I grew up, and Muhima, they had a particularity of being led by two conseillers who were ladies. One was Kamashara Rose, another one was Nyirabagenzi Odette, but also someone who was in charge of education on my hill, on my village, was very famous, renowned. She's now serving her term in a court, in a prison. Her name is Angelina, that's how we used to call her. Those are the people who are actually leading the killings. Some had headquarters of militia and men, and they had to issue orders to track down everyone who was listed and who was not yet to be found. So then they managed to organize that attack, and they invaded that area where we fled to, and ordering everyone to come out of house and of banana fields, and we're all assembled. We're rounded up in a place which was in between, and they started tying men together, half naked, and tie them together. And I was close to my father, and my father, seeing what was happening and realizing that we were going to make it anyway, he pushed me and ordering me very harshly to quit and go, because they wanted to start by selecting those who they had on a list, and after they would randomly picking people, maybe based on their appearances. That practice kind of exercises took more, maybe 40 minutes, and after selecting people, they decided to put aside women and the children, whom I joined out of my willing, because I wanted to stay with my father. But then they pushed us on that side, and we were taken then to the church. From where we were to the church, it was very close, but in the way it was very horrible. We had a dog eating the rotting flesh of the people. We had many dead bodies dumped by the roadside. Militia and around were jubilating and enjoying that kind of surrender, as they are saying it. In that way, women were begging for militia and men to kill them too, because they were separated by their husband. So it was a very fearful and a very scary kind of move. It was a matter of death, and we rushed to the church. In the church, we were received by the priest. The priest who received us before the genocide was such a very nice person. We used to call him a priest of youth. His name is Munyeshyaka Wenceslas. And he scornfully received refugees, including my family, because my mom and my sister made out. They did not stay on that in the first group. And then when we entered in the church, he scornfully laughed to us and asking widow where their husband were, while he knew exactly the fate that we were just coming to face. Though he let us in, and by the time the church was it was filled with the people who had fled for different reasons. Some had fled the war. For instance, here at Gisozi, the place was already under control of RPF. So many of the Hutu had quitted this hill of Gisozi and joined other refugees who had come from plus going to Byumba. There were people who had fled the war since 1992 and called the place called Nyakyonga. So those refugees from Nyakyonga were in a school which was close to the church, and they had made a red block, killing every single Tutsi that was crossing. And the other part of those Nyakyonga refugees were at the main school and primary school. Others were in the church. So in the church then, it was a mixture of people who had fled for different reasons, which made it maybe hard for militiamen to come and kill everyone randomly. They had to be selective. And actually we were living with the people who were going out and committing the genocide and come back in the church and staying with us. And they had the full rights of choosing whoever they wanted and take him out of the church and kill them on the field of the church. And the priest was very supportive of that practice. And sometimes he would ask girls to pay for their safety by accepting to sleep with him. Some were even killed later, as some refused. I remember Jacinta and some others. But also in the church, it was a very kind of challenging emotionally, because I'm talking about killings generally, but the previous group that has committed, because my father and my brother and the rest of my family members were left to the first place and they were murdered there, but the church continued. So the same group came to search us in the church, and they would proceed by leading the list. Just the next day after we arrived in the church, they called upon everyone to get out, and they started leading names, and they eventually led my name. And some were saying that I was found. Actually, they were confusing me with my brother, and they said that I was found. So being found meant that you were already killed. I was just in front of them looking at them leading my name, and I was invaded by so much fear. But then in that crowd, there was also some of the women had been taken out as well. And my cousin, whom we've met in the church, took me behind, and they got me back in the church. And we're living in top bottom of the church, and I stayed there. So we spent the whole 3 months, the 2 months, sorry, the rest of 2 months in the church. Killings continued, selection continued. I was selected, I think, for 4 times. And I would not exactly tell how I really made out of it. It was a miracle. And maybe without telling every little details of the calvary of the church, maybe I would call upon some of the dates that remained very significant in my journey of the genocide. That was on the 17th June 1994, from which after the neighboring camp was liberated by RPF in, I'm talking about St. Paul. So the next day, as to commit revenge, Saint Famille was attacked the next day, and they came and they started even randomly shooting at the people. Why? Because most of the Tutsi had been either killed or being taken into one of the process of evacuation, where some of the refugees who would accept to flee would be taken to the site controlled by RPF. Others were being taken to the site controlled by Rwandan government, but far from the city. And sometimes the priest would use the list of people who have accepted to join the RPF and who had been searched. Then after making their names, would actually take that same list to those who were committing, who are coordinating the killings, to come and find people in the church, because writing their names, that confirmed that they were actually in the church. But they thought it was about evacuation, which happened, but after each and every time, militiamen would come and use the same list to kill people, and the remaining will then be taken through that evacuation process. So on that very day, on the 17th, they came and killed, shot at everyone. I managed to land in a very tiny corner, and that corner, I was sitting with so many women. Were, I think, 3 men, if I remember well. And then they were using younger kids of around 8 years old or less than 10 years, basically. And those are the same kids from the refugees come from school, whom were being taken to church to look at the Tutsi to kill. They were telling them that they are committing revenge of their families who were lost in the war by also selecting the Tutsi that had to be killed. So that little boy charged towards me. Remember, he had a knife and a slipper, and he slapped my face, and actually took my clothes. But lucky, I would not call it lucky enough, but it just happened for one of my colleagues in primary school, whose name was Patrick. He had just come to jump on where I was sitting, exactly in that crowd of women and children. And he was much more visible. He was taller, darker, and he was wearing a hat. And he was very scared. But then that boy, instead of actually dragging me in front of the killers, he just picked him who was actually sitting behind me, and he dragged me in front of us. I remember that very corner was under control of one of the militiamen. Men. His name is Chimba. Chimba was a driver of one of the ministers, and he was a very much known guy. We knew him, and he knew us. And then Patrick tried to beg him for mercy, and Chimba told him that if that boy has chosen you, I cannot forgive you. So they took him just in front of us, and he was shot, I don't know, 100 times. And they left his body in front, and we remained there very shaken. I could not describe kind of a feeling you have when you are going through such a kind of a scenario. But then the killings lasted for maybe an hour, and they killed over 200 people, and they quitted that day. And the next day to do exactly the same thing, but just not coming to shoot on the people, but selecting those who they wanted. And that marked the whole period, and it was ended on 30th July in the night, where we started hearing much noise, and people around was marching. And we thought that the refugees, Nyakyonga refugees, who were living just in close proximity to us, have decided to come and kill everyone. But it was in the night, and we were very confident that we can actually run away. But then the sound, the movement increased, and in the middle of that, one of the military guy who was the overall commander of the gendarme, people who were guarding the church, called upon everyone, every refugee, and we gathered around in front of altar, and he told everyone that actually their government was defeated. I remember his words. He said, "Inyenzi zadutsinze, ntago tugifite." As many survivors said, then we saw Inkotanyi coming, marching on the main road of the city, and that actually marked the end of that agony. And following period was about the recovery process. I ended up losing over 372 people of my family. Those who have survived are less than 20. Though with the help of the government, will of government to support and rebuild genocide survivors community, I was able to go back to school, completing it, having a bachelor degree in international relations, building a family. My mom still struggling with the PTSD. Those who have survived the genocide in my family were very few. I think we're 3 or 2 men. Others were from the LPA side fighting. Then afterwards, I got a job to come and work here. So working here, basically, it was a bit of fulfilling duty as a survivor and a witness of agony of the dark history. And I could not bear much with a narrative of reconciliation, because it was kind of too heavy for me to bear with. The remaining of my family were found gradually, time to time, and I was able to find the body of my father and the rest of the members, and they were brought and buried here to the memorial. Then a very recent, in 2023, I confronted a situation, I always reflect on it, which was actually to face, to meet with someone who killed my family. I was working for one of the journalists. I was helping that journalist of Atlanta magazine in the US, and he was here doing a different research, and I knew him, so he reconnected with me and had asked me to also look for someone whom I knew has committed the genocide and who was released. So in my village, there is someone who admitted wholeheartedly to reveal his full involvement in the genocide and talking about people who partnered with him when they were committing genocide. So I thought of him being very honest, and then I invited him. But I had never heard much about his account on how he did it. So that was my very first time. So when I invited him, and when he started talking about people whom he partnered to commit the crimes and the people whom they've killed, I was very interested to know his opinion on what had happened on 22nd April. And then he started talking about how they killed the people and where they found them. And then by saying so, he also named my father and my brothers. So it was very hard to actually deal with it, because it was my very first time to hear someone wholeheartedly talking about the death of my family, and indeed accepting to take part in it. But I loved the challenge, I would say so, because that's Rwanda. I mean, being Rwanda, what I mean is that we need to face ourselves. We have a principle which says that every country, in order to move forward, has to reconcile with the past, to face its past and reconcile with it. So I decided to confront my past, and I think I have reconciled with it by listening up to account of that guy. And at the end of that kind of session, I would be able to take a picture with him. And each and every time, sometime, when I really want to assess myself, how far I am in this process of recovery, I'd always look at that picture. And it reminds me always that each and every person, whether survivor or non-survivor, has a task and a contribution to make for a better future of this country. And that's where I would like to close my sharing story. I'm very thankful to RPF, which halted the genocide under command of our hero and President Paul Kagame. And I thank the memorial for offering this occasion of commemorating, and thanking you for your kind attention. Dukomeze kwibuka twibaka, murakoze.
Urakoze cyane Serge, kandi turakubwiye ngo impore. After the testimony of a survivor, it's always a total silence. We're all speechless. So Serge Imore, and thank you for having this courage to stand here and share this horrific journey with us. Twongeye twakire Bonhomme. Let's welcome the artist Bonhomme again to give us another song.
Murakoze. Kandi indirimbo nise kubera ko bishwe bananiwe, kubera ko bishwe bashonje, kubera ko bishwe bambaye ubusa, kubera ko babuze ubarengera, nakoze indirimbo nyita kubera ko twaje ku rwibutso. Kubera ko uyu munsi twaje ku rwibutso, kubera ko uyu munsi twaje kubibuka, kubera intimba nyinshi iri ku mutima, kubera urukumbuzi ufitiye abo wabuze, kubera abana b'ibitambambuga bicwaga batazi n'icyo bazira, kubera ababyeyi bishwe by'urubozo bakabanza kubicira abana mu maso, kuko mvuga ibyo ukumva ari ubuhamya bwawe, nkaba mbivuga ukumva ari wowe mvuga, kuko iyo nkuru umva ari ubuhamya bwawe, iyo nkuru reka nyirekeraho, kubera yuko yishwe mudaherukana, ukaba utaramenye byibura n'agakuru ke, ntiwigeze umenya naho bamujugunye, cyangwa se ngo umenye ijambo rya nyuma yavuze, ukumbura ya minsi mukiri kumwe, ibyo bihe byiza byose ubu byabaye amateka, kuko mvuga ibyo ukumva ari ubuhamya bwawe, nkaba mbivuga ukumva ari wowe mvuga, kuko iyo nkuru umva ari ubuhamya bwawe, iyo nkuru reka nyirekeraho, ndagusabye ntiwibuka maze ukumva imbaraga zibaye nke, ndagusabye ntiwibuka maze ukumva inimbira kuganje, ntiwibuka urupfu abawe bishwe, jya wibuka n'ibihe byiza mwagiranye, ntiwibuka agahinda bajyanye, jya wibuka n'ibihe byiza mwagiranye, kubera ko wagiye uzi kuzabasanga, kubera ko wasanze bose barashize, aho mwari mutuye wasanze ari amatongo, abari bahatuye nabo usanga barishwe, kuko mvuga ibyo ukumva ari ubuhamya bwawe, nkaba mbivuga ukumva ari wowe mvuga, kuko iyo nkuru umva ari ubuhamya bwawe, iyo nkuru reka nyirekeraho, kubera yuko mwirwanye uko mushoboye, mugira ngo murebe ko byibura bucya kabiri, kubera bababyeyi barundaga amabuye, barunda amabuye mu bitenge bahereza abagabo, kubera babasaza na ya miheto yabo, kubera bya bikwerere na ya macumu yabo, kubera ya nzara n'inyota ya cya gihe, kubera amabuye yarwanaga n'amasasu. Kubera cya gihe twigabizwa n'ibitero, aho niho ababyeyi baherukana n'abana, aho niho abana baherukana n'ababyeyi. Iyo nkuru reka nyirekeraho. Ndagusabye niwibuka, maze ukumva imbaraga zibaye nke. Ndagusabye niwibuka, maze ukumva inimbira kuganje. Niwibuka urupfu abawe bishwe, jya wibuka n'ibihe byiza mwagiranye. Niwibuka agahinda bajyanye, jya wibuka n'ibihe byiza mwagiranye. Abo wibuka none reka nge ngusaba, niwibuka kagahinda bajyanye. Uje wibuka na bya bihe byiza bimwe mwagiranye, cya gihe mukiri kumwe. Kandi uje wibuka kwabawe batazimye, kandi uje wibuka iteka wiyubaka. Kubera yuko abawe batigeze bazima, kubera yuko ya mashami yashibutse, ndagira ngo muvandimwe ngire icyo ngusaba, ugerageze maze umwenyure gake. Kubera turiya twana tw'utwuzukuru twabo, kubera ayo mashami babarira useke gato. Maze wibuke kwabawe batazimye, maze wongere uhobera ubuzima. Maze ugerageze wumva icyanga cyo kubaho, maze ugerageze ongere kubaho. Kuko iyo nkuru wumva ari ubuhamya bwawe, nkaba nyivuga ukumva ari wowe mvuga. Kuko iyo nkuru wumva ari ubuhamya bwawe, iyo nkuru reka nyirekeraho. Ndagusabye niwibuka, maze ukumva imbaraga zibaye nke. Ndagusabye niwibuka, maze ukumva inimbira kuganje. Niwibuka urupfu abawe bishwe, jya wibuka n'ibihe byiza mwagiranye. Niwibuka agahinda bajyanye, jya wibuka n'ibihe byiza mwagiranye. Niwibuka agahinda bajyanye, jya wibuka n'ibihe byiza mwagiranye. Niwibuka agahinda bajyanye, jya wibuka n'ibihe byiza mwagiranye. Murakoze.
Murakoze cyane Bonhomme gukomeza kudufasha kwibuka. Now I would like to welcome Mr. Tom Ndahiro, who is going to be giving us today's talk relating to the genocide history. As he is coming forward, Tom is a genocide scholar, and he's an independent researcher, best known for his work to to tackle and fight against genocide ideology and the genocide denial. You're welcome, Tom. We are so honored to have you with us.
Thank you. First and foremost, before I started studying genocide, I'm a witness to genocide and a survivor of it. When the genocide started, I was here in Kigali in 1994. I know some people who were together. So, thank you for inviting me to speak with you. It's difficult always to speak after listening to survivors and the hell they went through, but it's inevitable. Today, on this 16th day of May 2026, we gather here at the Kigali Genocide Memorial as members of staff and leadership of Equity Bank, or Equity Group, I don't know which is the best way of saying it, to commemorate the genocide against the Tutsi. We gather in remembrance, we gather in mourning, we gather in reflection, and above all, we gather in vigilance. Remembrance of any genocide is an honorable act. It is an act of dignity towards the victims, both the dead and the living. It is a moral obligation to those whose lives were stolen, whose families were shattered, and whose humanity was denied. But remembrance is not only about honoring the past, remembrance is also a shield against the future. Without memory, societies become vulnerable to manipulation. And without memory, lies slowly replace truth. And without memory, hatred disguised. And without memory, hatred disguises itself as patriotism. Discrimination masquerades as justice, and violence represents itself as self-defense. Without memory, the disconnect between crime and the consequences can lead humanity back to the abyss. We are here to demonstrate our solidarity with the victims. That's why we are here. Those of you who are here for the first time, and even those who have come many times before, always ask yourselves the same difficult question, or questions. How did this happen? Why did this happen? How could neighbors kill neighbors? How could ordinary people become perpetrators of extraordinary evil? These are hard but necessary questions. And to answer them honestly, we must reject comforting myths. Genocide is not a spontaneous act of madness, rage, or contemporary anger. Genocide is not caused by people suddenly losing control, nor are perpetrators born murderers. Genocide is prepared, genocide is taught, genocide is cultivated, genocide is normalized, and genocide begins with words. Before today, I want us to reflect on one important example, a document that condensed the hatred into a political doctrine. It appeared in a Genocide's publication, Kangura number 6, in December 1990. Take note, December 1990. And their ideologues gave a title to this publication, Appeal to the Conscience of the Bahutu. Appeal to the Conscience of the Bahutu. Many people know only the final section of this appeal, which is the infamous 10 commandments, 10 Hutu commandments. But what comes before the Decalogue of Hate is equally important. Forgive me, Father, for using the word Decalogue, because it's more applies to the Bible, to the biblical 10 commandments. But the 10, we have two sets of 10 Hutu commandments, one of 27th September 1959, and another one in 1990. What comes before that Decalogue of Hate is equally important, perhaps even more revealing, because what we see there is the anatomy of genocide ideology itself. What we see today, and what you came to see, is the result of what was said that time. But in that document, we see the psychological preparation of ordinary people for mass murder, that what we see is the construction of fear, is the creation of enemy, is the manufacturing of paranoia, and finally, the moral justification for extermination. In the introduction of this appeal, there is a declaration, I quote, "The aggressor was defeated thanks to the unity of the Rwandan people, especially the Hutu majority," end of the quote. At first glance, some may miss the significance of this phrase, but its meaning is profound. The RPF fighters are immediately defined not as fellow Rwandans with grievances, not as citizens seeking return to their homeland, but as aggressors and therefore foreigners. This was not accidental. This was a deliberate rhetoric. What was said in this phrase was a foundational principle of Hutu power ideology since the days of MDR Parmehutu, Party for the Emancipation of the Hutu. When in Tanzania or Tanganyika, the party which fought for independence was TANU, Tanganyika African National Union. In Kenya, you had the Kenya African National Union. Here, the party which ruled the country after independence was Party for the Emancipation of Hutu. You can imagine the independence Rwanda got. The Tutsi was not simply a political opponent. The Tutsi was defined as an alien, as a foreigner, as illegitimate, and as a permanent threat to the Rwandan nation. And notice another dangerous phrase, part of this phrase which is dangerous, especially the Hutu majority, who then are considered the true Rwandan people. The implication is unmistakable, but the appeal continues, and I quote, "But the threat has not disappeared for all that. The enemy is still there among us, waiting for the right moment to try once again to annihilate us." The word annihilation is used as mirror reflection. What they did in 1991, 1992, 1993, and finally 1994 was predicted by that time. But here we get the architecture of fear in this sentence. The enemy is still there among us. The enemy is within. The enemy is not outside. The enemy is inside. The enemy is among neighbors, among colleagues, among classmates, among fellow citizens, and the enemy was among the family. Because in 1994 we have cases whereby people killed their own children because they had a Tutsi parent. Those were enemies. This is one of the oldest and most dangerous techniques of genocide ideology, convincing ordinary people that they are surrounded by invisible enemies plotting their destruction. The appeal continues, and I quote, "Therefore, Bahutu, wherever you may be, awaken yourselves, remain firm and vigilant, take all necessary measures to deter the enemy from launching another aggression." Take note of take all necessary measures. What did those measures become in 1994? The necessary measures became roadblocks, they became machete, they became massacres, the necessary measures became rapes, extermination, and killing one's relative. Those were necessary measures. The language was deliberately vague because genocide ideology often advances through euphemisms before revealing its full horror. And what is especially striking is this constant invocation of vigilance. Awaken yourselves, remain firm, be vigilant. Why? Because the population was being conditioned psychologically to believe that killing was not an aggression against individuals, but self-defense. That extermination was prevention. That mass murder was patriotism. This logic was reinforced at the highest political levels. For example, President Habyarimana echoed this ideology repeatedly, including in his speech of April 28, 1991, opening the extraordinary Congress of the ruling party MRND. The same framework appeared in messages circulated within the military establishment, including directives associated with the Army Chief of Staff, Deogracian Nsabimana, on 22nd September 1992, where the Tutsi inside Rwanda and Tutsi outside Rwanda was expressly framed as the enemy. And not only the Tutsi, but the Nilo-Hamitic people of the region were also categorized as enemies. The enemy had now been ethnically identified. The second subtitle of the appeal was called "The Ambitions of the Batutsi." And it states, the Batutsi are bloodthirsty and power-hungry, who seek to impose the hegemony of the Rwandan people through force of arms and the gun. Hold on a bit. What do you do with a people described as bloody thirsty? What emotions are being cultivated here? What is cultivated? Fear, hatred, disgust, suspicion. The dehumanizing language is intentional, is murderous. The Tutsi is not described as an individual human being. The Tutsi is transformed into a collective danger. The Tutsi is an existential threat. And this is what the genocide ideology always does. It removes individuality. The groups are identified as guilty from the wombs. It replaces humanity with stereotypes. It teaches population to see entire groups as inherently dangerous, and the appeal continues to rewriting history itself. There is a quote: "Remember also that at the beginning of November 1959, the Abatutsi provoked inter-ethnicity massacres in an attempt to eliminate the Hutu elite." In the middle of November 1959, I and my family were already refugees in Burundi. And we ran away from death, at least my parents when I was baby. In this phrase, you find what we call manufactured historical grievance. When violence is reversed and when victims become aggressors, and when aggressors become victims, and when history is weaponized, and then comes one of the most revealing passages in the appeal. One cannot doubt that the war launched against Rwanda in October 1990 was intended to achieve what the Abatutsi had unsuccessfully attempted through terrorism and guerrilla warfare from 1962 to 1967, end of the quote. And further, the appeal says, the permanent dream of the Abatutsi is to overthrow the Republican institutions and to restore the minority and the feudal power of the Abatutsi. Here you have another euphemism you non-Rwandans may not understand, or the young Rwandans would not understand. When they talk about Republican institutions, it's institutions where the Abatutsi do not participate in leadership. That's what they call Republican institutions. When you list, for us, this language is extremely important to understand. It portrays the Tutsi not merely as political competitors, but as biologically and historically incapable of coexistence. Because Tutsis here are also depicted as eternally conspiratorial, eternally expansionist, eternally power-hungry, but the propaganda did not stop at Rwanda borders. One of the most dangerous dimensions of this ideology was deliberate regionalization of the fear. The appeal states, when I say the appeal to the Hutu conscience. And here is a quote: "Having been defeated everywhere by the valiant Hutu people and their army, the Abatutsi began implementing a Machiavellian plan already conceived in 1962, which they called This is even more telling. The Bahutu must stop feeling pity for the Batutsi. Must stop feeling pity for the Batutsi. This would appear as the 8th commandment amongst the 10 commandments. What is happening here then? Human empathy is being attacked. Compassion is portrayed as betrayal, and the mercy is depicted as weakness. The moral barriers against violence and genocide are being systematically dismantled. Ordinary people are being conditioned psychologically to suppress conscience. And when conscience collapses, atrocities become possible. The appeal also continues to say our political life must be based not on principles of equality between Hutus and the Tutsi. This rejection of equality is central. Genocide ideology cannot coexist with equal citizenship. There are those who are supposed to live and those who are supposed to be killed. Those who are supposed to have rights and others who are supposed not to have them. Genocide ideology requires hierarchy, exclusion, and it requires a group declared permanent unworthy of belonging. This was not an abstract rhetoric, it was a preparation for action. And history tragically proved it. On 22nd November 1992, Dr. Leo Mugesera, who is serving life sentence here in prison after being deported from Canada, delivered one of the most infamous speeches of incitement in Rwandan history. He asked the rally, why do they not go back to Ethiopia by the Nyabarongo River? Nyabarongo feeds Akagera and the Nile. The river would later carry the bodies of murdered Tutsi. Words preceded slaughter. That's where words are important in understanding ideology of genocide. The language prepares violence and the ideology normalizes murder. It was like destroying the trash or waste disposal. The river was being considered as waste disposal mechanism. Long before the machete were raised, minds had already been conditioned. Even earlier, Gregory Kayibanda had entrenched the exclusionary ethnic politics after independence. His rhetoric repeatedly framed politics through ethnic majoritarianism and existential fear amongst the Bahutu to fear the Batutsi, although his wife was one. Kayibanda warned of what he described as a Tutsi threat to the Hutu majority and presented political competition as a zero-sum ethnic game. In one notorious formulation, he warned that if political power changed hands, it would amount to the end and sudden death of all of the Hutu nation. Such rhetoric transformed politics into existential ethnic confrontation rather than a democratic contest of ideas. After all, the country, so they said, was a Hutu nation, and Tutsi were only tolerated. The idea that power belonged permanent to one ethnic group laid dangerous foundations, later radicalized by Hutu power extremists in 1993, when what they called Hutu power faction was created. President Juvenal Habyarimana inherited and deepened many of these ideological foundations, although his government often projected an image of stability, development, but it did not prevent it from unleashing extremist rhetoric flourished internally, and particularly after the RPF attack of October 1990, when fear became state policy, ethnicity became securitized, and suspicion became institutionalized. The Tutsi population inside Rwanda, as we heard from the survivor, increasingly came to be viewed not as citizens entitled to equal protection, but as accomplices of an external enemy. And this is one of the greatest dangers societies face everywhere when states stop seeing sections of their own population as fully belonging to the nation. Ladies and gentlemen, what stands out most in this appeal to the conscience of the Bahutu is how political language manufactured grievances, fear, and ethnic essentialism are fused into one ideological framework. Entire populations are portrayed as permanent enemies. Reconciliation is rejected as deception. Equality is framed as dangerous. Coexistence is portrayed as impossible. And this was the process of creating genocidaires without scruple. People were taught not to see fellow human beings. They were taught to see threats, cockroaches, enemies within, invaders, and conspirators. And once human beings are stripped of humanity in the public imagination, violence becomes easier, and genocide becomes inevitable to perpetrators. This lesson is not for Rwanda. It is a lesson for humanity. Because a genocide ideology is not uniquely African. It is not uniquely Rwandan, and every genocide begins with narratives of fear and exclusion. It happened during the Holocaust, in Bosnia, in Armenia. Mechanisms are frightening, similar, only the names change and the targets. But the methods repeat themselves, and that's why remembrance is prevention. When we remember truthfully, we resist manipulation, and when we remember courageous, we defend humanity. Ladies and gentlemen, on May 16, 1994, exactly 32 years today, at the height of the genocide against Tutsi, Time magazine carried one of the most haunting titles ever written about Rwanda. On the cover, there was, "There are no more devils left in hell. They are all in Rwanda." There are no more devils left in hell. They are all in Rwanda. It was 16th May 1994. The title was reportedly inspired by the words of an unnamed missionary, by what he had witnessed as the extermination of Tutsi unfolded before the eyes of the world. These words carried enormous weight from a missionary. What he did not say, some devils he was talking about were bishops, were priests, were men of the cloth. These words captured the horror of rivers filled with corpses, churches turned into slaughterhouses, children hacked to death, women raped before being murdered, and neighbors transformed into executioners. The image of devils was not a casual hyperbole. It reflected the collapse of moral imagination itself when the killings had reached a level where language seemed inadequate. Humanity appeared absent, evil seemed limitless. And yet, more than 30 years later, we must revisit that sentence carefully and critically. Because while the genocidaires were indeed carrying out unimaginable crimes in Rwanda, it is also true that the devils were not confined geographically in Rwanda alone. Some of them were in elegant offices far away from the killing fields. Some wore suits, not militia uniforms. Some spoke the language of diplomacy while people were being butchered in the halls of United Nations. Some enabled evil through indifference, cynicism, geopolitical calculations, or outright complicity. The unnamed missionary was right about the horror, but history obliges us to widen the lens. For genocide is never enabled only by those who swing machete. It is also enabled by those who rationalize hatred. Armed extremists dilute moral clarity and or choose political convenience. Over human life. While Tutsi were being exterminated in Rwanda, parts of the international community debated the terminology. Should we call it acts of genocide? Was it tribal violence? Was it a civil war? The victims were dying while the diplomats were editing language. What should we write? What should we say? At the United Nations, peacekeepers were reduced instead of reinforced after the murder of 10 Belgian soldiers. General Romeo Dallaire from Canada warned repeatedly about impending massacres, weapons cache, and extermination plans, yet the world largely chose paralysis. When he notified the UN was in January 1994 with the infamous genocide cabal. The machinery of international diplomacy became a theater of hesitation where human beings were hunted house by house. And then there was France. When if you want to locate devils, you can't say Rwanda was the only theater. No serious discussion of the genocide against the Tutsi can avoid examining the role played by France or the French political and military support to the Habyarimana regime before and during the genocide. There is a letter from President Sindikubwabo thanking President Mitterrand on 22nd of May that thank you for political, diplomatic, and moral support. Here you have a genocide president thanking a French president for moral support. Moral support. Operation Turquoise, launched in June 1994 under a humanitarian mandate, remains one of the most controversial episodes of the genocide. While some lives were saved, genocide authorities and the perpetrators also benefited from escape routes into what was then Zaire, now the DRC. Many acts of genocide reorganized there with devastating consequences for the wide Great Lakes region, even up to now. This is not about collective guilt of people. Ordinary French citizens were not committing genocide in Rwanda, nor were ordinary UN officials. But institutions and the governments must be judged historically by the consequences of their actions, omissions, alliances, and failures. The lesson matters profoundly because evil is rarely isolated. Genocide requires ecosystem of enablement. It requires propaganda inside the country and indifference outside it. It requires killers locally and rationalized internationally. It requires extremists on the ground and hesitation in foreign capitals. And we saw it happening in New York when the ambassador of the genocidaires was present throughout when his country was being discussed, and they even invited the foreign minister of the genocidaire government to come and address the UN to deny the crimes they were committing. And yet, despite this, the devils did not triumph. This is the most important thing I want to highlight. That is also part of the story we must tell. The genocidal regime was defeated by the RPF. The machinery of extermination was stopped. Survivors rebuilt lives from ashes, as we heard from one of them. A nation that had been turned into cemetery chose reconstruction over revenge. That victory over genocidal evil remains one of the most significant moral and political realities of modern African history. But remembrance demands honesty. To honor the victims fully, we must remember not only those who killed, but also those who enabled killing through silence, denial, appeasement, or geographical calculations. Because when the world fails to confront genocide truthfully, it risks preparing the ground for future atrocities elsewhere. The warning of May 16, 1994, therefore still echoes today, not because devils belong to one nation or one people, but because human beings everywhere are capable of enabling evil when fear overcomes conscience, when ideology replaces humanity, and when political interests become more important than human life. That's why remembrance matters, not to imprison ourselves in grief, but to sharpen vigilance and to sharpen and to defend truth and to resist dehumanization. And to ensure that when humanity again faces the choice between convenience and conscience, it chooses conscience before it is too late. Finally, to the leadership and staff of Equity Bank gathered here today, your presence matters a lot. Institutions matter in preventing hatred. Banks are not only financial institutions, they are social institutions. The values you cultivate, dignity, equality, inclusion, ethical responsibility, contribute to the kind of society that either resists or enables hatred. Genocide prevention is not only the responsibility of government or memorials. Genocide prevention belongs to educators, it belongs to businesses, it belongs to religious leaders, to media professionals, it belongs to families. And prevention belongs to young people who are the majority here. It belongs to every citizen of this world, to every institution, and to every generation. And vigilance is necessary because the world still faces dangerous forms of dehumanization. Ethnic hatred still exists. Conspiracy theories against a people still flourish. Propaganda still spreads faster than the truth. Social media amplifies hatred at terrifying speed. And the denial continues, which is a fertile ground for yet another genocide. There are those who, even after genocide, there are always those who minimize, relativize, distort, or justify what we are here for today. There are those who try to erase intent, those who attempt to equate victim and the perpetrator, those who recycle all the conspiracy theories in modern language, those who deny documented crimes while presented themselves as defenders of truth. That too is why remembrance matters, because denial kills memory And when the memory dies, prevention weakens. Today, as we stand here among the memories of over 1 million Rwandan lives destroyed during the genocide against the Tutsi, let us honor the victims not only with the sorrow, but with the responsibility. Let us reject every ideology. I'm saying every ideology because it happens in other countries, and it can happen in another country that teaches hatred. Let us confront every language that dehumanizes others. Let us challenge every attempt to divide people into permanent enemies. And let us teach future generations truth, not myths designed to justify exclusion. And let us understand this clearly. It is a duty, I'm addressing to you, it's a duty requiring courage, a duty requiring vigilance, a duty requiring moral clarity. The victims we honor today cannot speak, but memory speaks for them. The survivors among us carry scars that speak. This Kigali memorial speaks. History also speaks. The question is whether humanity is willing to listen. May the memory of the victim of the genocide against the Tutsi remain a permanent warning to the world. May remembrance strengthen our humanity, and may truth defeat denial, and may vigilance defeat hatred. And may we all leave this place today more committed than ever to defend humanity and dignity wherever it is threatened. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tom, for your informative and insightful lecturing. We have now come at a symbolic moment for Kwibuka, which is the candle lighting. Please look on your side. We have candles. When you look under the candle, there is a black thing. So you just slide it to the right, and we light this candle for remembrance, for dignity, and for hope. We light them to honor more than 1 million Tutsi victims who were killed in 1994 genocide against Tutsi. But as we lighting them, we also stand with the survivors and all who still carrying on the healing journey. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I would like to welcome the representative of IFA to come forward to give us his remarks.
This is the light of remembrance.
Equity Bank, Board of Directors, delegation team, Yakorewe mushizi mukuru, sorry, nagira ngo bavandimwe bafite bacu baguye muri Jenoside muri 1994. Nagira ngo munyemerere mbagezeho ubutumwa bw'umuryango Ibuka. Banyita Augustin Nshimiyimana, nkaba ndi komiseri wa Ibuka mu rwego rw'igihugu muri komisiyo y'ubuzima, imibereho myiza n'uburinganire. MD yatugejejeho amakuru y'uko mu bakozi ayobora abenshi bapfushije urw'agashinyaguro. Turabakomeje mu izina ryanjye bwite, ariko cyane cyane mu izina rya Ibuka yantumye, nimukomere. Ubutumwa bwa Ibuka bukubiye mu ngingo 3. Ingingo ya mbere niyo kugaya abagize uruhare bose mu bwicanyi bwakorewe Abatutsi, babaziza uko baremwe. Turabizi neza ko bamwe bari bagize cyangwa bafite akazi nk'akanyu, aho guteza imbere igihugu bagishakira iterambere, bahanga udushya, bakora amafaranga, batanga akazi, bakambura ubuzima abo bakoranaga, basangiraga. Ndavuga bakoraga akazi nk'akanyu. Twakagombye kuba twicaye aha tureba icyateza imbere igihugu, twiga imishinga, tubyaza amafaranga ayandi. Ariko nk'uko twabibwiwe, ni inshingano zacu nk'Abanyarwanda kwibuka. Ubutumwa bwa kabiri bwa Ibuka nubwo gushima. Turashimira iki kigo Equity Bank uruhare, agaciro iki kigo giha Abatutsi bishwe muri Jenoside, ariko ntikigarukiraho, kigafasha n'ababashije kurokoka gusubira mu buzima busanzwe. Ibyegeranyo twakoze mu kubashima, twagiye tureba uruhare rwanyu mu gusura inzibutso, mu gufasha abatishoboye, mubifuriza imibereho myiza. Ubutumwa bwa gatatu ni ugusaba. Nk'uko Nyakubahwa Tom Ndahiro amaze kubitubwira, nta kwirara. Biradusaba guhora buri gihe dufatanya na Ibuka n'ubuyobozi bw'igihugu kwamagana ingengabitekerezo ya Jenoside aho turi hose, haba mu kazi, haba mu miryango yacu. Muribuka wari Minisitiri w'Intebe Yohani Kambanda abwira abaturage igihe cy'urugamba ati nimujye guhinga, ariko muhinga n'imbunda, umwanzi natera nawe ureke guhinga urase. Ubutumwa bwacu nka Ibuka nubwo kubakangurira bitari mu murongo wa Kambanda, nubwo kubakangurira gukora nibyo, no kubakangurira nanone gufatanya kurwanya ikibi cyose aho kiri, cyane cyane iyo ngengabitekerezo. Ubwo butumwa kandi bwo kubasaba nanone bushamikiye ku bundi bwo gufatanya guhangana n'ihungabana. Ihungabana ririmo rirazamuka mu barokotse. Ubushakashatsi bwakozwe na Minisiteri y'Ubuzima bwerekana ko ihungabana rirenze 35% mu barokotse Jenoside, mu gihe mu muryango nyarwanda rigeze kuri 12%. Dufatanye rero, kuko kubaka nanone bisaba kugira ubuzima bwiza bwo mu mutwe. Amateka twaciyemo araremereye, ariko no mukoro wacu guhangana n'icyadusubiza inyuma, kandi ntabwo bizakushoboka nidushyira hamwe. Nimwumva rero abarokotse bahungabana n'agahinda baterwa no kubura amakuru ahagije yaho ababo bajugunywe ngo bashyingurwe mu cyubahiro, no kutamenya bazize iki, nk'uko tujya tubyumva mu ndirimbo z'abahanzi. Ibuka yantumye ku barokotse bari hano bakora muri iki kigo cya Equity Bank ngo ntimuheranwe n'agahinda, kuko dufite igihugu kidushakira ineza, kiduha umwanya wo kwibuka, wo kunamira abacu, wo kubatura indabyo, wo kubaririmbira tubavuga mu mazina abo tuzi. Dukomeze rero dufatanye gushakisha amakuru y'abacu aho baguye. Ejo nari muri Nirida mu karere ka Huye, aho nasabaga nanone mpagarariye Ibuka gufatanya mu bushakashatsi, nubwo bakora ubushakashatsi bushingiye ku bijyanye n'inganda, namwe mukaba mukora ibijyanye n'imari no guteza imbere amafaranga, niko navuga. Ariko ntabwo bibujijwe kugira ishami ry'ubushakashatsi. Ikindi, ntabwo bibujijwe ko muhangana n'ihungabana hari ibigo byatangiye guha akazi abashinzwe, abafite ubumenyi mu bijyanye n'ihungabana, ku buryo babashakira ibiro, ugize ikibazo mu kazi akaba yagana uwabihuguriwe. Ndabibona muri Rwanda Revenue barabitangiye, ndabibona n'ahandi. Impamvu mbibabwira murayizi. Ushobora kuba aho wambaye neza nka karavati, wambaye neza umwenda wawe, uri mu kazi wicaye ku mashini, ariko mu kanya gatoya abantu bakabona ibintu birahindutse, ugatangira ugahinduka uwundi bitewe na ryahungabana. Ingero mwagiye muzibona, aho ndetse n'abantu b'abashakashatsi bahinduka, ugasanga barahindukirana igihugu cyabo. Ibyo bishobora kubaho kuko trauma igenda yiyuburanya, iriyoberanya. Abayahudi bamaze imyaka 80, ariko abatarabonye Jenoside barimo bagenda bahahamuka. Bivuze ko rero natwe tugomba kwitegura hakiri kare, tukibuka, tuganisha mu nzira zo kwiyomora no komora abazadukomokaho ubuvivi n'ubuvivure. Nyakubahwa mushyitsi mukuru, muri mino bumwe turafatanya na Ibuka kandi turabashimira. Dushimira uruhare rwanyu mu kugira ngo iyo nzira yo komora ibikomere igende neza. twibuke twiyubaka.
murakoze cyane Dr Augustin uhagarariye ibuka muri iki gikorwa cyo kwibuka abacu ku ijambo mutugejejeho. Twagira ngo I would like to welcome the group board chair to come forward to give us his remarks.
Thank you very much. Let me just say right from the outset that my experience this afternoon has been very, very emotive and very draining. And I just want to acknowledge my fellow board members, members of the Equity family from Rwanda, and distinguished guests. In one afternoon, I must say at my own personal level that I've learned, I have been able to completely contextualize in a way that I've never done before the Rwandan genocide. And when I stand here and I look at members of our staff in Rwanda and our board members, I know that this subject touches each one of you in different ways. Some of you as direct survivors, and also in connection to friends, relatives that were touched or continue to be touched by the genocide. Thank you very much, Mr. Tom Dahire, for your treatise that really opened my mind, and especially you contextualizing the fact that genocide doesn't happen at a moment. It is something that happens from deep planning, both from the physical as well as from the mental. And herein lies the greatest danger, that there is always danger lurking if we are not continuously vigilant. And I just want to say that somebody said that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. The price of freedom is eternal vigilance. But there is a speck of right in Rwanda that, as we remember the genocide, as the government unites people, we see the effects of renewal. Just as genocide brings to light the evil of mankind, the recovery from that period brings also to light the ability, the capacity of the human mind. It brings out the resilience of the people of this country, and it shows what leadership means. And I can say, during our fight for independence in Kenya, the British, when they wanted to denigrate the role that the freedom fighters were playing, they had a phrase that they said, the leader of this movement was a leader unto darkness. The opposite is you look at the leader of the renewal in Rwanda, and you see leadership into the right. I want to say that I'm deeply touched, and in a way, nature seems to have conspired that I would be standing here today, joining you in remembrance in Kwibuka 32. Because I've been to Rwanda several times, I've always wanted to visit the Genocide Memorial. I always find myself without enough time. When this particular day was organized, I didn't know that it would also be the day that the Equity Fraternity in Rwanda would be coming for remembrance. And also that it would coincide with members of our group board, our foundation board, and of course, the local Rwandese. And I feel greatly honored, and I feel that this was maybe the greatest moment to my visit to Rwanda. I have read about the genocide. I read the book by Imakiri Ribigiza, and when I listened to the testimony of the genocide survivor, I just remembered that book and the hiding in small places. Finally, if we say that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance, at our own personal and collective space as Equity family, what does this vigilance mean to us? And what is in our role in renewing and growing this country? Because in whatever space we work, we have a duty, we have a calling, we have a commitment that we must make our workplace the shining example of the new Rwanda, where there is tolerance, where there is equality, where there is peace, where we consider each other as a human being first, and second, as a different person who had no choice of where you are born or whom you are born. So I would like you to recommit yourself as Equity family to the values that we espouse as a community. And to know that it's only if we work at our individual level that collectively the community, the country, will really experience this renewal. Once again, I thank all of you, and I thank you for the work that you're doing in impacting on the people of Rwanda through the various interventions in financial services that Equity Group delivers. And that is our role in making sure that we play our rightful role in the renewal of this country. Asanteni sana. Thank you.
We thank you also, Group Board the Chair, for your great remarks. We have come, coming towards the end of our event today. I would like to welcome Dr. Augustin, Dr. Theoneste, who is our guest of honor today, to come forward and address to the audience.
banyakubahwa abayobozi bakuru ba Equity Bank mu Rwanda, GCEO, MD, Directors, bakozi mwese, muryango mugari wa Equity Bank, nshuti bavandimwe mwiriwe mukomere kandi. Good afternoon everyone. Mbere yuko ngira icyo mvuga kisumbuye nagira ngo banze shimira abakoze documentaire twinjirimo yashoje ivuga ko politike mbi isenya ubumwe bw'abaturage. Ibyo bivuze mu magambo make ibyatumye mu Rwanda haba Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi. Ndabashimiye. Before I go any further with my remarks, I want to thank people who made the documentary we watched as we walked in. The final phrase was said that bad politics lead to this destruction of the unity of people. I think it sums up what's happened in Rwanda, what's led to the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. So I want to take this moment and thank people who thought about making this documentary. Let me thank again the leadership of Equity Bank, the staff, and the whole Equity Bank family in Rwanda for organizing this important event of Kwibuka 32, the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. Thanks also for inviting the Minister of National Unity and Civic Engagement to be with you in this commemoration event, which, as you all know, holds so much meanings in the life of our country. Nagira ngo mbashimire ko mwatumiye Minisiteri y'Ubumwe bw'Abanyarwanda n'inshingano mboneragihugu ngo tubane muri iki gikorwa cyo kwibuka, kuko nk'uko twese tubizi kivuze byinshi mu mateka y'igihugu cyacu. Remembering the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi is not just a mere annual ritual. It's a moral and civic obligation. We owe it to our loved ones who were killed in the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. We owe it to ourselves. We owe it to the whole world, because genocide is a crime against humanity. The genocide that was committed against the Tutsi was not meant only for physical obliteration of the Tutsi. It was also meant to erase their faces, their names, and their legacy from our collective memory. And that's why, when we commemorate, we also mean to say no, to say that their memories, their legacy, will be honored and will be preserved forever. Abakoze Jenoside ntago bashaka gusa kumara Abatutsi, bashakaga no gusiba amateka yabo, amazina yabo, amasura yabo mu mateka yacu. Niyo mpamvu yo twibuka tuba tuvuga ngo turabyanze, abavandimwe bacu tuzahora tubibuka, ibyiza bakoze uko babayeho tuzabyibuka kandi tuzabirinda igihe cyose. Tom Ndahiro, who gave us a nice talk about the history of genocide in Rwanda, said it quite clearly. Genocide is never an accident. It's planned meticulously. It's funded, especially financially. And when it is being executed, there is faultless coordination. Therefore, this must be a special moment for us, especially that we are with a financial institution, which, as you all know, the banks we had, the commercial banks we had in Rwanda, played a major role in making sure that the genocide was executed. Mu gihe twibuka Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi, turi kumwe n'umuryango wa banki ikora ubucuruzi, nagira ngo narembuze kubivuga mu rundi rurimi ko dufata umwanya tukazirikana ko Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi mu Rwanda itarayobowe gusa n'abanyapolitike bize neza kandi heza, ahubwo bimwe mu byatumye ishoboka nuko hari bamwe bari abacuruzi bakaba abanyenganda ndetse n'abashoramari bakomeye bakoresheje imbaraga za politike cyane bahabwa ububasha na leta zariho kugira ngo bashyigikire umugambi wa politiki. Bamwe bahawe inguzanyo kugira ngo ubucuruzi bwabo cyangwa ibikorwa byabo bashoyemo imari bikomere, inyungu zizavamo zibafashe gushyigikira umugambi wa politiki wariho wo kumara igice kimwe cy'abanyarwanda. Ingero ni nyinshi. Muzi witwa Kabuga Felicien, yari umunyenganda, yari umucuruzi, yari umushoramari ukomeye uzwi cyane mu bashoye imari muri Eritrea. We have many examples. The most known is Felicien Kabuga, who was a well-known businessman, mostly known for having contributed to the establishment of infamous radio Eritrea. There are also others who were leaders in the Interahamwe family, like George Rutaganda and Phineas Ruhumuriza. They were also businessmen. And we have it from the record that they were given loans by commercial banks so that their businesses could flourish, and then in return, they support the political agenda that was there of exterminating a portion of our population. And here, I mean the Tutsi. Ariko u Rwanda rwarahindutse. Nyuma y'imyaka 32 icyo cyasha dufite ku mateka turi kugisiba. Minisiteri y'Ubumwe bw'Abanyarwanda imaze iminsi ishyize hanze icyegeranyo cyangwa ubushakashatsi bwatweretse ko igipimo cy'ubumwe bwacu ndetse no kwiyunga bigeze kuri 95 n'ibice 3%. Tugeze ahantu heza. After 32 years of rebuilding, Rwanda, I would say, is a new country. A few months ago, the Minister of National Unity and Civic Engagement published a study on the national unity of Rwandans. And it revealed to us that the level of our national unity is at 95.3%. And there are many factors that can explain that. And among them, there's of course inclusive governance. There is of course the feeling that now we feel like Rwandans, turi abanyarwanda, ndi umunyarwanda. We have one culture, one identity, same values and taboos. And among the things that this study also revealed is that commemoration of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi is one of the factors that indeed has consolidated the unity of Rwandans. Igihugu cyacu kizwi cyane nk'igihugu cy'imisozi igihumbi. Ariko buryo si ibyo gusa, turi n'igihugu cy'amahirwe n'uburyo urenga igihumbi. Ku bakuru nta na rimwe mu gihugu cyacu byigize byoroha gukora ubucuruzi no gushora imari nk'uko bimeze ubu. Rwanda, we are mostly known as a country of thousand hills, pays de mille collines. But we are also a country of opportunities and ways of doing things. For those who know, it has never, ever been easy or easier as it is now to do business in Rwanda. The records are there, everyone can check. Ni ikintu rero gikomeye twagezeho nk'igihugu kuva Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi ihagaritswe n'abari ingabo za RPF bitwaga RPA. Ibyo tubona ubu bikorwa mu gihugu cyacu mu nzego nyinshi harimo n'izo guteza imbere ishoramari n'ubucuruzi bihabanye cyane n'ibyakorwaga mbere.
nagira ngo nibutse ko n'uwadusengeye yabivuze padiri ko mu Rwanda 1994 hari amabanki make cyane kugira ngo yari abiri, ariko n'abatutsi baki bakoragamo. Itariki ya mbere y'ukwa 10 muri 1990 abenshi barafashwe barafungwa bitwa ibyitso baratotezwa. 94 igeze abenshi baranabamara. I was saying that in Rwanda before 1994 there were about 2 commercial banks, and the few Tutsi people were working there. When the liberation struggle started in 1990, most of them were arrested, tortured, and when April came, most of them actually were exterminated. Akaba ari nayo mpamvu ngira ngo mbonereho nshimire Equity Bank kubera ibikorwa byanyu mu Rwanda. Ni ikimenyetso ntakuka cyerekana ko u Rwanda ruri kujya imbere kandi ko abana barwo bose bahawe amahirwe angana, nta mwana w'umunyarwanda usigara inyuma. Mu bushakashatsi navuze mu kanya, abanyarwanda bemeje mu bwiganze buri hejuru ya 47% ko abanyarwanda bahabwa amahirwe angana mu by'ubukungu. Nta gushidikanya rero ko ibikorwa bya Equity Bank mu Rwanda biri mu bituma abanyarwanda banyurwa n'amahirwe bahabwa. The study I alluded to earlier said that 87% of Rwandans are happy with the equal opportunities they are given in economic areas. And there is no doubt that the investment such as what Equity Bank is doing in Rwanda is contributing to that. So we are very grateful. I looked at the figures, and also I can see it now. Most of the staff are young. The figures that I had, 48% are aged between 26 and 35. So this is an indication, especially in a country which is overwhelmingly young, that indeed you are contributing to the feeling that all Rwandan children have indeed opportunities to flourish and prosper. Dufite igihugu navuga gifite amahirwe kuko duhuje ururimi, tugahuza umuco, tugahuza indangagaciro, ubupfura, ubwangamugayo, gukunda igihugu, gukunda umurimo. Ni inshingano zacu rero ko twubakira kuri izi nshingano, kuri izi ndangagaciro, kugira ngo abakiri bato tubafashe bamenye amateka, be kuba gusa abakozi bahembwa buri kwezi, ahubwo babe n'abaturage beza baha agaciro ubumwe bw'abanyarwanda. We are very blessed with a country and a population that share one culture, one language, the same values. So it's our responsibility to build on those values like honesty, hard working, patriotism, so that the young people, especially the staff, are not only responsible staff, but also responsible citizens who value the history of the country, who know where we are coming, and especially where we are going, and the present role of our national unity. Yes, in these 32 years, we have achieved quite a lot, but this is not the time for compresses, not at all. The genocide ideology is still being spread, especially in our sub-region, especially also among the youth via social media platforms such as YouTube, TikTok, X, and others. So that's why, as a family, as a society, we have this responsibility to make sure that there is no space for genocide ideology, be it at workplace or at home. Nibyo tumaze kugera kuri byinshi mu rugendo rwo kubaka igihugu cyacu, ariko iki si igihe cyo kwirara. N'ababivuze mbere ngo babivuze, ingengabitekerezo no kuhakana jenoside bikomeje guhabwa intebe, ndetse gira n'umwanya cyane mu batoya kuko nibo babona akoresha imbuga nkoranyambaga nka YouTube, TikTok, X cyangwa na WhatsApp. Akaba ari niyo mpamvu twese duhamagarirwa nk'umuryango nyarwanda n'inshuti zacu kwima umwanya ingengabitekerezo ya jenoside ahariho hose, haba mu kazi, haba mu rugo ndetse n'ahandi hose. Ntabwo tugomba kuyiha umwanya na gato. As I conclude my remarks, let's reiterate again that in Rwanda we are blessed with a leadership that values and gives equal opportunities to every child of the country. We have a leadership that welcomes and supports every investor. We have a leadership that wants us all, Rwandans and our friends, to grow and flourish with dignity. Let us therefore learn from our history and be different in doing business so that we can contribute to the social development of our country and the promotion of our national unity. We must always remember that our national unity comes over and above everything else. Thank you once again for organizing this commemoration event, and let us continue to remember, to unite and renew. Ngana ku musozo, nagira ngo nongere mvuge ko turi igihugu gifite amahirwe ndetse menshi, kuko dufite ubu buyobozi budaheza umwana warwo, umwana w'igihugu uwo ari we wese, kandi bukama amahirwe mu bukungu ndetse no mu bindi byiza by'igihugu hatitawe ku cyaricyo cyose. Dufite amahirwe yo kugira ubuyobozi bwakira kandi bugakorana neza na buri mushoramari. Dufite amahirwe yo kugira ubuyobozi bushaka ko abana bose b'u Rwanda batera imbere, bakabaho neza bazira ikibi, ariko bakabaho mu gaciro. Nkaba ngira ngo nsabe cyane abakiri bato gukoresha neza ayo mahirwe, kandi twese hamwe n'abakuru tukigira ku masomo dukora mu mateka yacu, noneho tugakora ishoramari n'ubucuruzi biteza imbere imibereho yacu, ariko cyane cyane tugakomeza kubaka ubumwe bwacu. Ndabashimiye, murakoze cyane, dukomeze twibuke twiyubaka.
Murakoze nyakubahwa mushyitsi mukuru. Thank you so much, our guest of honor, for your remarks. Tugeze ku musozo w'igikorwa cyacu cyari kiduhurije hano, kugira ngo nongere mbashimire mwese twatangiranye kugeza muri aka kanya, kandi mbifuriza gukomeza kwibuka ariko tuniyubaka. We have come to an end of our Kwibuka 32 commemoration event. I would like to thank you all who are here present, who have been here from the start till the end. Let's keep committing ourselves to remember, unite and renew. Murakoze cyane kandi mbifurije kugira umugoroba mwiza.
Umwanyurukwe n'undanyurukwe kuva cyagiye kugeza uyu munsi, sinongeye kumenya agakuru kawe. Ndabizi ko kuri muri twe wabibagirwa, iyo ureba amazi atemba wibuka batembana, wabona amazi y'ibiyaga ukabibuka bareremba. Mbe Mana yacu bashyire mu gituza cyawe, mbe Mana yacu bashyire mu gituza cyawe. Rwanda twararokotse, dufashe twuzuza inshingano, twiyibukira abacu, dufashe twuzuza inshingano.